Peter, you know what I'm going to say, so I really don't need to say it, but I'll say it for the benefit of our friends here. I think this system, if there's going to be a system, lives and dies with the county offices of education. They're at the center of whatever sort of technical support we're able to provide for continuous improvement in California's education system. But there are lots of other resources with CCEE, with nonprofits. How do you see the evolution of this system as we move forward from here?
Well, I would have guessed strong. I was going to guess that my organization was bigger than the LAO, so he was next. So.
He's going to critique the risk.
Okay, so I appreciate it. First, I'm with CSESA, which is the County Superintendents Association. We actually are not that big. There's only 10 of us, but occasionally people ask me what I do for a living. What you've now seen Charlene Stringham. What I do is try and keep up with the leaders in the state at the county level, like Charlene, and support activities for them to work together, opportunities for them to work together across county lines to really have a statewide system of support. So I really have the advantage of being able to offer my comments after you've had her presentation. I also need to, we're all sharing little personal things. Part of the personal perspective I bring to this is I have a daughter who's a principal engineer with Toyota Motor Company. And so it's been secondhand, but it's been ongoing to see that continuous improvement for a firm like Toyota is not a program, it's a culture, it's a way of doing things. And I really think that's several people, Sandra, Heather, others talked about the importance of viewing this as a culture. It really is a critical change that we need to implement across the board. The title is Infrastructure Support for LEAs. So the first thing I want to say is there isn't just one infrastructure. There are a number of them. They're operating in parallel. And so one of the mandates on us, one of the critical elements of those of us working more or less at the state level, is to work together so that they're aligned and mutually supportive, and the word we use a lot now, coherent. And obviously Glenn and Department have been leaders in that, and Carl and CCE. So I just want to give a couple of examples. We know there's a crisis in the state on shortage of teachers and principals who serve as instructional leaders. So the state is stepping into that. We have a California Educator Development Program that's looks like it's going to be approved as part of this budget. That'll be a collaboration of the Commission on Teacher Credentialing and the California Center on Teaching Careers to support grants around the state to build that pipeline. Well, the California Center on Teaching Careers is operated by Tulare County. You just heard Tulare County. So, there's that initiative going forward. The governor is funding and legislature is funding a second cohort of the classified educator training program, credentialing program. County offices, 11 county offices participated in that last year. I assume we're going to have a lot of county offices and school districts consortia participating in that again, because that's really an important pipeline to start addressing that critical need. But at the same time, we need to figure out what as best we can, what's the most effective thing to do, what works best. So we have Orange County, the Orange County Office of Education, the San Luis Obispo County Office of Education, working with the San Luis Obispo, Cal State San Luis Obispo, to do a study in collaboration with counties around the state of what are effective teacher recruitment and retention programs in their districts, in the districts of those counties. Not always, no offense, funded with new grant money like Gates and we're getting great support from Bechtel Foundation, but with their own resources to get this job done. And how do you learn from that? And in continuous improvement, you talk about a short cycle. This is a 5-month study. We're spending $10,000 on it, so it's not like this huge study, but it's to learn quickly, share, then learn again, start building that system. We'll obviously be happy to share it with anybody in this room, and our purpose is to share it among the counties and with the CTC. Another example is standards implementation. I'd actually say for us that's sort of a flagship one. Obviously, there's elements of the LCAP. There are elements of what a successful school district is doing, implementing the California standards, recruiting quality teachers and principals. But you also have to have efforts that are specifically supporting those efforts. So in this case, we were fortunate to get funding from the Bechtel Foundation to support work around science and math standards implementation. Well, it started out, and it is continuing, as a collaborative effort of the State Board of Education, the California Department of Education, and the county offices. So we were working in a aligned direction, trying to, not a bunch of random acts, but actually trying to put in place a system to support districts, recognizing the extraordinary diversity of the state. That in turn, I hadn't really thought about at the time as continuous improvement, but listening to the conversation today, the next step was to bring together committees to find, okay, so what's the problem and what are we going to do about it? Which one are we going to tackle first? We ended up calling those collaboration committees, but that's not just the department and the state board and counties. That's school districts, that's representatives from CTA, that's the higher education folks that are engaged in those subject areas. They identified, probably won't shock anybody in the room, but equity and access is one critical issue, school leadership is another. And actually today, as it happens, we have the science community of practice going, which has 120 people brought together from around the state, county staff, district staff, instructional leadership corps from CTA, department staff, to try and dig deeper into those issues, figure out what's the action plan, both across grade levels or types of districts, but also regionally, because the needs are so different in rural Northern California and obviously LA, or you all know the diversity of the state. So my point of that is one, that I do think, as Carl said, there's some really positive things going on as we move in this direction, in that we are moving it together and we are trying to learn from this experience and learn from it quickly and have an aligned effort. In terms of the LCAP and the Cal Matters report and the school accountability and whatever, however you want to phrase it, the state board is leading a conversation now that I guess is going to go to the state board in September about what are the statewide systems of support. So we are at the, not the front end, but we're very much engaged in that collaboratively, all of us, in terms of how does that fit together. The critical things I think we've learned from this is it has to be involved across all the agencies. We need to reach agreements, so working in alignment. We need to involve not just the agencies, but the districts, the teacher organizations, and the community groups to make that work. So I was trying to think of so what's my key point, and Arun sort of stole it. We didn't talk before, but I do think it's important we never lose sight of the fact that one of the strengths of LCFF and LCAP is it causes the instructional side and the fiscal side to work together. Charlene talked about the calibration trainings we did for the county staff this year. I'm really proud of that effort that was put in that was very consciously an effort of fiscal staff and program staff to work together to design the training materials, to collaboratively review those draft materials, and then to co-present them. Because we have to bring those two issues together, what's happening on the fiscal side of the house and what's happening in the program. I say Arun sort of stole my issue because we had the exact same sense. We have had, I don't know if you use the word luxury, but we've had the advantage the last few years of we have new resources in the center. How are we going to, in the system, how are we going to invest them? Now, we know a lot of districts are going to be operating in an era of constraint. There are some districts that are going to actually be operating in an era of cuts. And so how in that environment do you maintain the community engagement, the focus, the collaboration that very often falls apart when there's not enough money? And we do have this problem. My background actually is fiscal, and so you give the locals $1 and you say, okay, well, you're going to solve your retirement plan, retirement problems. You're also going to restore the cuts from the fiscal crisis and increase compensation, so recruit and retain quality staff. And we're also going to improve and increase services for what's actually a majority of students in the state. And the reality is there's still just that $1. and so in terms of how we avoid, in terms of Sarah's question, that really becoming a even larger problem than a necessity it has to be as we balance those conflicting demands. I think I just had two ideas. One is, I totally agree that we're not going to solve these problems right away. At the same time, we need to convey a sense of urgency. And you know, I think if you look at Charlene's slides from Tulare, you see it, the change in the work they're doing from the 15-16 forums to the 16-17 forums, when you see her talking about 27 iterations of this chart, that conveys a sense of urgency that we need to communicate in terms of addressing these issues. And the other is, and this is one of the reasons to keep the fiscal people so closely involved, there needs to be a sense of transparency, at least in a sense that nobody's trying to hide the ball. You know, what resource available, what are we trying to address? I think one of the challenges we do face, absolutely, is what Arun said, is focus. You know, Charlene's network about math performance in 5th grade. You know, getting that narrow focus. I think there's lots of evidence in critical role of effective school leaders. So the role of the principal. I mean, we could pick the focus. But we got to have focus. Can't try and do everything. But that needs to be a community-engaged, transparent kind of activity. So as we talk about how we support our districts, I think that's the next challenge for county offices and for all of us that are working together in this effort. But I do have to, having ended with sort of a thought on the fiscal crisis, I have to say I think a lot of great collaborative work has been going forward. And it's reflected in these aligned support structures that have been put in place. So